Jake Martinez wiped his hands on his apron and looked at the massive kitchen around him. The diplomatic ship Serenity's Edge had the biggest cooking area he had ever seen. Alien machines hummed quietly while preparing meals for 12 different species. Each species needed different foods, and Jake had learned to cook for all of them. The Zephyrians liked their meat still moving. The Crystalline Federation members ate only pure energy crystals that Jake had to charge with special equipment. The Void Walkers needed liquid nitrogen poured over everything. Jake had been cooking for aliens for 2 years now, and he was very good at his job. Captain Veltar walked into the kitchen. He was a tall Zephyrian with blue skin and forearms. His species thought they were better than humans in every way. He looked down at Jake like he was looking at a pet. "Human chef," Veltar said in his deep voice. "The delegates want to see your knife skills again tonight. They find it amusing how you cut things so fast." Jake nodded and pulled out his knife roll. 7 knives lay inside the black leather case. Each knife was different. Some were long and thin. Others were short and thick. All of them were perfectly sharp. Jake had made each knife himself during his training on Earth. "Of course, Captain," Jake said. "What would they like me to prepare?" "Something that requires many cuts," Veltar said. "They want to see the primitive human work with his simple tools." Jake did not show any anger on his face, but inside he felt something cold. The aliens always called humans primitive. They thought Earth was just a backwater planet full of simple creatures who could only do basic jobs. Jake let them think that. It was safer that way. Ambassador Christine floated into the kitchen. She was from the Crystalline Federation, and her body looked like living glass. Light moved through her in rainbow patterns when she spoke. "The human cook," she said in a voice like singing crystals. "We are curious about your cutting techniques. Your species seems to have natural talent for violence, even in peaceful activities." Jake began pulling vegetables from the cooling units. He arranged them on his cutting board in perfect lines. Each vegetable was a different color and texture. He picked up his medium-sized knife and began to work. His hands moved so fast that the aliens could barely see them. The knife flashed through carrots and made perfect thin slices. It danced through onions without making Jake's eyes water. It carved through tough alien roots like they were soft butter. The vegetables fell into neat piles. Every piece was exactly the same size. Jake's movements looked like a dance. The knife seemed to be part of his hand. He never looked down at what he was cutting, but his cuts were always perfect. "Fascinating," Christine said. "How does your species develop such precision with bladed tools?" "Practice," Jake said simply. He did not tell her about the years of training. He did not mention the school on Earth, where he learned to use knives in ways that had nothing to do with cooking. He did not talk about the other students who learned the same skills. Lieutenant Pete Collins walked into the kitchen. He was the only other human on the ship, and Jake's closest friend. Pete worked in security, but the aliens treated him like a messenger boy. They gave him simple jobs and ignored his suggestions about ship safety. "Jake," Pete said quietly, "the sensors are picking up something strange. 3 ships following us at long range." Jake kept cutting vegetables, but his hands slowed down just a little. "What kind of ships? Unknown design," Pete whispered. "They're staying just outside our detection range, but I caught them on the deep scans." Captain Veltar S4 ears twitched. He had heard every word. "Lieutenant Collins, you worry too much. This is neutral space. No one would dare attack a diplomatic vessel." Jake finished cutting and began arranging the vegetables in a large cooking pot. His movements were still smooth and controlled, but Pete noticed that Jake kept his knife roll close to his body. That was something Jake only did when he was worried about something. The ship's dining hall was full of aliens from 12 different worlds. They sat at tables that could change shape to fit their bodies. Some delegates floated in the air. Others needed special chairs that could hold their strange forms. Jake pushed a cart full of food between the tables and served each species their special meal. The aliens talked about trade agreements and peace treaties. They discussed which planets would join their alliance and which planets would be left out. Earth was never mentioned. To them, humans were not important enough to include in galactic politics. Jake listened to everything while he served food. He had learned to understand most alien languages during his training. The delegates did not know this. They spoke freely in front of him because they thought he was just a simple cook who could not understand their words. The human's knife work is impressive for such a primitive species, said Delegate Northek from the Silicon Collective. His body looked like living rock, and his voice sounded like grinding stones. Yes, agreed Veltar. They have natural talent for cutting things. It must come from their violent evolution on that dangerous planet. Jake placed a plate of charged crystals in front of Christhine. She looked up at him with eyes like diamonds. Tell me, human, how long did it take you to learn such precision? Many years, Jake said. That was true. He had started training when he was 8 years old. The school had told his parents he was learning to be a chef. That was only partly true. Your species fascinates us, Christhine continued. So much potential for violence, yet you choose to create food instead. It is almost artistic. Jake smiled and moved to the next table. If only she knew how artistic violence could be when done correctly. His teachers had shown him that fighting and cooking used many of the same skills. Timing, precision, understanding your tools, knowing exactly how much pressure to apply dot after dinner. Jake cleaned his knives one by one. He ran his finger along each blade to check for any small chips or dull spots. The knives were perfect. They were always perfect. He had made them from special metal that never dulled and never broke. Pete came into the kitchen after the aliens had gone to their rooms. Those ships are still following us, he said, and there are more of them now. At least 6. Jake rapped his knives in their leather roll and tied it closed. Have you told the captain? He thinks I'm being paranoid, Pete said. He says humans always expect trouble because we come from a dangerous world. Jake put his knife roll in his personal locker, but he did not lock it. Something felt wrong about this trip. The diplomatic mission was supposed to be secret, but somehow those ships had found them. Jake had learned to trust his feelings during his training. His instructors had called it tactical intuition. Pete, Jake said quietly, if something happens, stay close to me. What do you mean? Jake looked at his friend. Pete was a good man and a loyal friend, but he did not know about Jake's real training. Pete thought Jake was just a cook who had gotten lucky with a job on an alien ship. Just trust me, Jake said. If there's trouble, stick close and do exactly what I tell you. The ship's lights dimmed to simulate nighttime. Jake went to his small room next to the kitchen. He lay on his bed, but he did not sleep. Instead, he listened to the ship's engines and the small sounds that meant everything was normal, but something was not normal. Jake could feel it in the way the ship moved through space. They were being hunted, and very soon the hunters would make their move. When that happened, Jake would have to stop being just a cook. He would have to become what he was really trained to be. Jake closed his eyes and remembered his lessons. Violence was like cooking. It required the right ingredients, perfect timing, and exactly the right tools for the job. Tomorrow he might have to cook something very different than food. Jake woke up to the sound of alarms. Red lights flashed in his small room, and the ship shook hard enough to throw him out of bed. He grabbed his knife roll and ran toward the kitchen. Something had hit the ship and hit it hard. the hallways filled with panicking aliens. Delegates ran in all directions while security guards tried to organize them. Jake moved through the chaos like water flowing around rocks. Nobody paid attention to a human cook carrying his knives. All personnel to emergency stations, Captain. Veltar's voice came through the ship's speakers. We are under attack by unknown vessels. Prepare for boarding. Jake reached the kitchen and quickly tied his knife roll around his waist. The knives felt comfortable against his body. He had carried them this way many times during training, but never on a real mission. His hands moved automatically to check each knife's position. The ship shook again. This time, Jake heard the sound of metal tearing. Something was cutting through the hull. Jake had heard that sound during his training simulations. Boarding pods were punching holes in the ship's armor. Pete Collins stumbled into the kitchen. Blood ran down the side of his head, and his security uniform was torn. Jake, we need to get to the safe room. The bridge is under attack. What's attacking us? Jake asked. He was already moving toward the emergency supplies. Void hunters, Pete gasped. 6 ships. They came out of nowhere and disabled our engines. Their boarding pods are cutting through the hull in 12 places. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. Void hunters were the worst possible. Enemy to face. They were savage aliens who attacked anything that moved through their territory. They took no prisoners and left no survivors. Most species fled when they heard Void Hunter ships were nearby. How many got aboard? Jake asked. At least 50, Pete said. Maybe more. Our security team is trying to hold them back, but their weapons are too strong. Explosions echoed through the ship. The lights flickered, and Jake heard screaming from the direction of the dining hall. The Void Hunters were working their way through the ship room by room. They would kill every living thing they found. Jake pulled out his smallest knife and tested its balance. The blade was only 4 inches long, but it was perfectly weighted for throwing. During training, he could put this knife through a metal target from 30 feet away. Pete, I need you to listen carefully, Jake said. Get to the safe room and lock yourself inside. Do not come out until I come to get you. What are you talking about? Pete stared at his friend. You're just a cook. You need to hide with me. Jake pulled out his second knife. This one was longer and had a curved blade designed for cutting through armor. I'm not just a cook, Pete. I never was. The kitchen door exploded inward. 3 Void Hunters rushed through the smoke. They were 7 feet tall with black armor, covering their insect-like bodies. Each one carried weapons that could cut through steel. Their eyes glowed red in their helmet visors. Pete froze in terror, but Jake was already moving. His first knife flew through the air and punched through the lead hunter's visor. The alien fell backward without making a sound. Jake's second knife swept across the throat of the second hunter before it could raise its weapon. The third hunter fired its energy weapon at Jake, but Jake was not there anymore. He had rolled under a table and come up behind the alien. His third knife, a long, thin blade, slid between the armor plates and found the hunter's heart. The alien dropped dead at Jake's feet. Pete stared at the 3 bodies. What just happened? I told you I'm not just a cook, Jake said. He cleaned his knives and put them back in their places. Now go to the safe room and lock the door. Pete stumbled away without saying another word. Jake could hear more Void Hunters moving through the ship. Their heavy footsteps echoed in the metal hallways. Jake counted at least 20 different sets of footprints. Jake moved to the kitchen's back entrance. This door led to the service corridors that ran behind the walls. Maintenance workers used these passages to repair the ship without disturbing the passengers. Jake had memorized every inch of these corridors during his first week aboard. He slipped into the narrow passage and began to hunt. Jake moved without making any sound. His feet found the quiet spots on the metal floor. His breathing was so controlled that even sensitive alien hearing could not detect him. Through the walls, Jake heard void hunters breaking down doors and searching rooms. They spoke to each other in harsh clicking sounds. Jake understood their language. During his training, he had learned to speak the languages of every known hostile species. Search every room, the lead hunter clicked. Kill everything that moves. Take anything valuable. What about the humans? Another hunter asked. Humans are worthless, the leader replied. Kill them quickly and move on. Jake smiled without humor. These aliens were about to learn that humans could be very valuable indeed. Valuable as enemies if you were stupid enough to attack them. Jake found his first target in the corridor outside the delegate quarters. A single void hunter was trying to break down Ambassador Christine's door. The alien's back was turned and it was focused on its work. Jake's knife went into the base of the hunter's skull. The alien died instantly and fell against the door. Jake caught the body before it could make noise and dragged it into an empty room. 2 more hunters were searching. The medical bay. Jake watched them through a ventilation grate. They were destroying equipment and looking for drugs they could sell. Jake dropped through the ceiling behind them. His first knife took out the hunter on the left. His second knife silenced the one on the right before it could call for help. Jake was back in the ceiling before their bodies hit the floor. The ship's AI system began analyzing the security footage. In the control room, the surviving crew members watched Jake move through the ship like a ghost. The cameras could barely track his movements. He appeared, killed, and vanished faster than most species could think. What is that human? Captain Veltar whispered as he watched Jake eliminate another group of hunters. I don't know, said the ship's security chief. But he's killed 12 of them in 10 minutes. Jake could hear the remaining hunters becoming nervous. They had expected easy prey, but their companions were disappearing one by one. Their clicking speech became faster and more urgent. Something is hunting us, one hunter said. Impossible, their leader replied. This ship only has weak aliens and primitive humans aboard. Jake found the leader in the main corridor. The large hunter was directing his remaining soldiers to search in groups. Jake counted 15 aliens still alive. Too many to attack directly, but Jake had other ideas. He cut the power cables in the maintenance shaft. The corridor lights went out and emergency lighting came on. The hunters clustered together in the dim red light. They could not see well in the darkness, but Jake had trained for this. Jake's throwing knives flew out of the shadows. 3 hunters fell before the others knew they were under attack. Jake rolled between their legs and came up with his longer blades ready. The fight lasted 30 seconds. When it was over, Jake stood alone among the bodies. His knives were clean and sharp. Not a drop of alien blood remained on the blades. The hunter leader was still alive, but barely breathing. Jake knelt beside the dying alien and spoke in perfect void hunter language. Tell your people, Jake said quietly. Humans are not prey. The alien's red eyes went wide with shock. It tried to speak, but Jake's knife had damaged its throat. The hunter died still staring at Jake in disbelief. Jake stood up and listened to the ship. It was quiet now, except for the hum of engines and life support. All the void hunters aboard were dead. Jake had eliminated 53 enemies in less than 20 minutes. He walked back toward the kitchen to find Pete and the other survivors. The ship's crew would have questions about what they had seen on the security cameras. Jake would have to give them some answers, but not all of them. Some secrets were too dangerous to share, even with friends. Jake found Pete in the safe room with 12 alien delegates. They were all pressed against the far wall, staring at him like he was a monster. Jake still had his knives ready and alien blood on his clothes. He probably did look like a monster, To them. Is it over? Pete asked. His voice shook as he spoke. For now, Jake said. He cleaned his knives one by one and put them away. But there are more hunter ships out there. They'll send boarding parties when this group doesn't report back. Ambassador Christine floated forward. Her crystal body was dim with fear, but her voice was steady. Human, what are you? No cook moves like that. No primitive species fights with such skill. Jake looked at the assembled aliens. These were some of the most important beings in the galaxy. They controlled trade routes and commanded fleets. They decided which planets lived in peace and which ones faced war. But right now, they were all afraid of one human with a collection of knives. I'm exactly what you think I am, Jake said. Just a cook who's good with knives. We saw the security footage, Captain Veltar said. His forearms shook as he spoke. You killed 53 Void Hunters in 20 minutes. You moved faster than our cameras could track. Your knives cut through armor that stops plasma weapons. Jake sat down on a supply crate. He was tired, and there was still work to do. The hunter ships outside would not wait much longer before attacking again. Have you ever wondered why humans are so good at jobs that require precision? Jake asked. Why we can fix your machines better than your own engineers? Why we can pilot your ships through asteroid fields that would crush your best pilots? Your species has natural talent, Christine said uncertainly. No, Jake replied. We have training. Lots and lots of training. The ship shook as more hunter vessels approached. Jake could hear their engines through the hull. At least 10 ships were surrounding them now. The hunters were not taking any more chances. Jake, Pete said quietly, there's something I need to tell you. I'm not really a security officer. Jake looked at his friend with new interest. Pete was pulling equipment from his uniform that Jake had never seen before. Small devices that hummed with energy. Weapons that looked nothing like standard security gear. I'm part of the same program you are, Pete continued, but I specialize in ship systems and electronic warfare. I've been watching over you for 2 years. Why didn't you tell me? Jake asked. Orders, Pete said. We were supposed to maintain our covers unless something like this happened. Jake nodded. It made sense. Earth's government would not send just one agent on a mission this important. They would want backup and support systems in place. How many of us are there? Jake asked. On this ship? 3, Pete said. The third one is Amy Rodriguez. She's been working as a maintenance tech in the engine room. Jake remembered Amy. She was a quiet woman who kept to herself and did her job well. The aliens barely noticed her. She fixed their machines and cleaned their systems without complaint. Jake had thought she was just another human worker trying to make a living in space. What's her specialty? Jake asked. Explosives and engineering, Pete said. If we need to take out those hunter ships, she's our best option. The ship's communication system crackled to life. A harsh voice spoke in the Void Hunter language. Jake translated for the others. They want to negotiate, Jake said. The hunter commander wants to know what killed his boarding party. What do? We tell them? Captain Veltar asked. Nothing, Jake said. We don't negotiate with Void Hunters. They'll kill us all regardless of what we say. Jake activated his personal communicator. It was a small device hidden in his knife roll that could reach other human agents anywhere on the ship. Amy, this is Jake. Are you receiving? I'm here. Amy's voice came through clearly. I've been monitoring the situation. 10 hunter ships have us surrounded. Their weapons are charged and ready to fire. Can you disable them? Give me 20 minutes and I can overload their engines, Amy said. But I'll need a distraction to get close to their ships. Jake looked at the assembled aliens. They were still watching him with fear and confusion. These beings had controlled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had never imagined that humans might be more than simple workers and entertainers. Pete, can you hack their communication systems? Already working on it, Pete said. His fingers flew over his hidden devices. I'm into their network now. They're planning to board us again in 15 minutes with 3 times as many troops. Jake stood up and checked his knives one more time. Each blade was perfect and ready. He had trained for this exact situation hundreds of times. Multiple enemy ships, limited backup, innocent civilians to protect. I'm going to give Amy her distraction, Jake said. I need you to protect the delegates until this is over. Jake, there are over 200 Void Hunters on those ships, Pete said. You can't fight them all. Watch me, Jake replied. Jake left the safe room and made his way to the ship's docking bay. The hunters would expect him to hide with the other survivors. They would not expect him to come to them. The docking bay was empty, except for emergency supplies and maintenance equipment. Jake found what he was looking for in the tool storage area. A spacesuit designed for human use, and a small thruster pack for moving between ships. Jake put on the suit and checked its systems. Everything worked perfectly. He had practiced space combat during his training, but he had never done it in a real battle. Today would be a first for him. Jake opened the docking bay doors and launched himself into space. The hunter ships hung in space around him like metal sharks. Their hulls bristled with weapons, and their engines glowed with deadly energy. Jake activated his suit's stealth systems and began moving toward the nearest hunter ship. His thruster pack made no sound in the vacuum of space. To the alien sensors, he would look like a piece of floating debris. The first hunter ship had an airlock on its lower hull. Jake attached a small explosive device from his suit's toolkit to the airlock door. The explosion would breach the hull and create confusion while Amy worked on disabling their engines. Jake moved from ship to ship, placing explosive charges on airlocks and weapon systems. The hunters still had no idea he was outside. They were focused on planning their next attack on the diplomatic vessel. Jake's explosives went off in sequence. 10 hunter ships suddenly found themselves with hull breaches and damaged weapons. Emergency alarms rang through their corridors as atmosphere rushed out into space. The hunters scrambled to repair the damage, but they were too late. Amy Rodriguez had used the distraction to plant much larger explosives on their engine cores. One by one, the hunter ships began to explode as their power systems overloaded. Jake watched from space as enemy vessels turned into expanding clouds of debris. Amy had done her job perfectly. The hunter fleet was destroyed and the diplomatic mission was safe. Jake flew back to the Serenity's edge and entered through the docking bay. The aliens were waiting for him when he removed his spacesuit. They looked at him with new eyes now. They understood that humans were not the primitive species they had believed. Your people have been protecting us, Ambassador Christine said. For how long? Long enough, Jake replied. We've been watching and waiting for the right time to reveal ourselves. Captain Veltar approached Jake cautiously. What happens now? Do humans plan to conquer the galaxy? Jake smiled and pulled out one of his knives. The alien stepped back in fear, but Jake simply began cutting vegetables for dinner. His movements were smooth and precise, just like they had always been. We don't want to conquer anyone, Jake said as he worked. We just want to cook good food and keep our friends safe. But now everyone knew that human cooks carried knives that could do much more than prepare meals. The diplomatic ship limped toward the nearest space station, while repair crews worked to fix the damage from the hunter attack. In the ship's medical bay, Jake sat while a Zephyrian doctor treated cuts on his arms. The doctor's 4 hands shook as he worked. I have treated many warriors, the doctor said quietly, but I have never seen anyone fight like you did. Your species must have a terrible history of violence. Jake did not answer. His history was more complicated than the doctor could imagine. While the alien worked, Jake remembered his childhood. On Earth, the school that was not really a school. The teachers who were not really teachers. The lessons that prepared him for a war most humans did not even know was coming. Ambassador Christine entered the medical bay. Her crystal body flickered with nervous energy as she approached Jake's bed. She carried a datapad filled with information. She had been reading for hours. "I have been researching your planet," she said. "The official records show Earth as a minor world with limited technology, but there are gaps in the data. Large gaps." Jake finished pulling on his shirt and looked at the ambassador. "What kind of gaps?" 50 years of missing information," Christine replied. "Your planet's development records stop suddenly and then resume with completely different technology. Levels. It is as if Earth became a different world overnight." Jake knew what had happened 50 years ago. That was when the first alien scout ships had crashed on Earth. Governments of the world had worked together to study the technology and prepare for contact with galactic civilization. They had also prepared for war. "Maybe your records are just incomplete," Jake suggested. "No," Christine said firmly. "These gaps were created deliberately. Someone has been hiding Earth's true capabilities from the galactic community." Captain Veltar joined them in the medical bay. His blue skin was pale, and his forearms hung limply at his sides. The attack had shaken him badly, and learning about Jake's abilities had made things worse. "I have been reviewing our crew records," Veltar said. "Every human on this ship has gaps in their background. False identities, missing years, training that does not match their supposed jobs." Jake stood up and walked to the medical bay's window. Outside, stars moved slowly past as the ship traveled through space. Those stars looked peaceful, but Jake knew better. The galaxy was full of predators, and Earth had been preparing to face them for decades. "How many humans are really out here?" Veltar asked. "How many of your people are pretending to be simple workers while they watch and wait?" "Enough," Jake said. "We've been placing people throughout the galaxy for 50 years. Cooks, maintenance workers, pilots, engineers. Humans are everywhere now." Pete Collins entered the medical bay carrying a secure communication device. His face was serious as he handed the device to Jake. "Command wants to talk to you." Jake activated the device, and a hologram appeared above it. The image showed an older human woman in a military uniform. Jake recognized her immediately. General Lisa Stone was the director of the Blade Dancer program and Jake's former instructor. "Agent Martinez," General Stone said. "Your cover has been compromised. The diplomatic incident is being reported throughout the galaxy." "I understand, General." Jake replied, "What are my new orders?" "Earth has decided to accelerate our timeline," Stone said. "We're revealing ourselves to the galactic community. Your mission now is to serve as our first official ambassador." The aliens in the medical bay stared at the hologram in shock. They were seeing direct communication between Earth and one of its agents. This proved that humans had been organized and watching them for decades. "General," Ambassador Christine said, "may I ask why your people have been hiding among us?" "General." Stone turned to look at the crystal alien. "Ambassador, your species and others have been fighting wars for thousands of years. Pirates, raiders, and hostile empires attack peaceful worlds regularly. Your governments are too busy with politics to protect innocent people, so you decided to protect them yourselves?" Captain Veltar asked. "Someone had to," Stone replied. "Human agents have prevented dozens of attacks on civilian targets. We've stopped 3 wars from starting and ended 2 others before they could spread. Your people never knew because we work in secret." Jake watched the aliens absorb this information. Their entire understanding of galactic politics was changing. For thousands of years, they had believed they were the advanced civilizations protecting primitive species like humans. Now they learned it was the other way around. The Void Hunter. Attack was not random. Stone continued. They knew about this diplomatic mission because someone leaked the information. Someone wanted you all dead. Who would do such a thing? Christine asked. We're still investigating, Stone said, but we have suspects. There are factions in several governments who profit from continued conflict. Peace treaties hurt their business. Amy Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. Jake had not seen her since the battle, but she looked tired, and her maintenance uniform was covered in grease and burn marks. She had worked hard to save the ship. General? Stone, Amy said respectfully. I've completed my analysis of the hunter ships. Their weapons and technology are more advanced than our records indicated. Someone has been selling them upgraded equipment. Confirmed, Stone replied. We've traced the weapons to 3 different suppliers. All of them have connections to legitimate governments. Jake felt anger building in his chest. The Void Hunters were savage killers, but they were being armed by supposedly civilized species. Political leaders who talked about peace during the day were selling weapons to murderers at night. What's our next move? Jake asked. You're going to complete the diplomatic mission, Stone said. But this time, you'll be representing Earth as well as serving as protection for the other delegates. The other governments will never accept humans as equals, Veltar said. We've treated your people as servants for too long. Then you'll have to change your thinking, Stone replied. Because humans are not servants anymore. We're partners, or we're nothing at all. The hologram flickered and disappeared. Jake put the communication device away and looked at the aliens around him. They were all staring at him with new understanding. The human cook they had ignored for 2 years was actually a representative of a power they had never imagined. Jake, Pete said quietly, there's something else. I've been monitoring galactic communication networks. Word about the Hunter attack is spreading fast. Other human agents are revealing themselves across the galaxy. What do you mean? Jake asked. The maintenance worker on the Crystalline Federation flagship just stopped an assassination attempt on their High Council. Pete said, a human pilot saved a Zephyrian colony ship from raiders yesterday. A cook on the trade station at Proxima 7 prevented a terrorist bombing. Jake smiled for the first time since the attack. Earth's children were coming home from the shadows. Humans who had pretended to be simple workers for years were finally showing their true abilities. This changes everything, Chris then said softly. If humans have this much capability, why did you stay hidden for so long? Because we needed time to understand you, Jake replied. We needed to learn your languages, your politics, your weaknesses, and strengths. We needed to be ready for whatever came next. And what comes next? Captain Veltar asked. Jake pulled out one of his knives and began cleaning it with a soft cloth. The blade gleamed in the medical bay's lights. It was beautiful and deadly, just like the human race itself. Next we have dinner, Jake said. I need to cook a meal for beings from 13 different worlds. Earth makes 14. But everyone in the room knew that dinner would never be the same again. They would be eating food prepared by a member of the most dangerous species in the galaxy, a species that had been protecting them all along. Jake stood in his kitchen, preparing what might be the most important meal of his life. Tomorrow, the ship would reach the diplomatic station, where representatives from 40 worlds would gather to sign peace treaties. Tonight he would cook for beings who finally understood what humans really were. The kitchen felt different now. Jake moved with the same precision as always, but there was no need to hide his abilities. When he flipped vegetables in the air and caught them perfectly cut, the alien observers no longer thought it was just good cooking skills. They understood they were watching a master of combat arts preparing food. Amy Rodriguez worked beside him, helping with the complex meal. She wore her maintenance uniform, but now everyone knew she was an expert in explosives and engineering. Her steady hands that could defuse bombs were equally skilled at delicate food preparation. "Jake," Amy said quietly, "I've been monitoring the communications from the diplomatic station. 3 governments are threatening to withdraw from the peace talks because of what happened here." "Which ones?" Jake asked as he seasoned a large pot of soup. "The Silicon Collective, the Gas Giant Federation, and the Hive Worlds," Amy replied. "They're claiming that humans are too dangerous to include in galactic politics." Pete Collins entered the kitchen carrying intelligence reports. His security uniform was real now, not a disguise. Earth had made him the official military liaison for the diplomatic mission. "It gets worse," Pete said. "The Void Hunter attack wasn't the only one. Human agents across the galaxy are reporting coordinated strikes on diplomatic targets. Someone is trying to sabotage the peace process." "How many attacks?" Jake asked while stirring a sauce that required perfect timing. 17 so far, Pete said, but our people stopped all of them. The problem is that now everyone knows humans have been secretly protecting the galaxy for decades. Jake nodded as he tasted the sauce. It needed more heat. He added spices with the same precision he used when placing a knife between an enemy's ribs. Cooking and fighting both required understanding your ingredients perfectly. Ambassador Christine floated into the kitchen. Her crystal body pulsed with nervous energy, and rainbow patterns moved through her transparent form. She had been meeting with the other delegates for hours, trying to calm their fears about humanity. "The delegates are terrified," she said. "They're calling humans a hidden threat that has been manipulating galactic politics for 50 years. "We weren't manipulating anything," Jake replied. "We were protecting people." "I know that," Christine said, "but fear makes beings think strange thoughts. Some delegates believe Earth has been planning to conquer the galaxy all along." Jake pulled his largest knife from its place on the wall. The blade was 2 feet long and perfectly balanced. He had forged it himself from metal taken from the first alien ship that crashed on Earth. The knife could cut through any known armor. "Let them come see me work," Jake said. He began cutting meat with smooth, powerful strokes. "Let them watch me prepare food instead of preparing corpses. Maybe they'll understand the difference." Captain Veltar entered the kitchen with 2 other Zephyrian officers. All 3 aliens stayed near the door, ready to run if Jake made any threatening moves. They had seen the security footage of him fighting Void Hunters, and they knew how fast he could move. "The station commander wants to search your ship for weapons," Veltar said. "He believes you're carrying military equipment disguised as cooking tools." Jake held up his knife so the light reflected off its edge. "He's not wrong. But these aren't hidden weapons. They're tools that can serve 2 purposes. The delegates want proof that humans aren't planning to invade," one of Veltar's officers said. "They want your government to recall all human agents and restrict Earth to its own system." Amy laughed as she arranged vegetables on serving plates. "That would be impossible. There are over 10,000 human agents scattered across known space. We're embedded in every major government and corporation. Removing us would collapse half the galaxy's infrastructure." 10,000? Christine asked in shock. "That's just the ones we know about," Pete said. "Earth has been very thorough in our placement program." Jake finished cutting the meat and began assembling the final dishes. Each plate had to accommodate a different alien digestive system while still looking appealing to the others. It was like conducting an orchestra where every instrument played a different song. "There's something else," Pete said quietly. "I've been analyzing the attack patterns on the diplomatic targets. The enemy knows exactly where our agents are stationed. Someone has been feeding them intelligence about the Blade Dancer program." "Jake," stopped working and looked at his friend. How is that possible? The program is classified at the highest levels. As a traitor, Amy said, someone in Earth's government is working with the forces that want this peace process to fail. The kitchen fell silent except for the bubbling of sauces and the hum of alien cooking equipment. Jake had spent years preparing for external threats, but he had never considered that the danger might come from within Earth itself. We need to complete this mission, Jake said finally. Whatever happens after that, we deal with it then. Jake loaded his dishes onto serving carts and wheeled them toward the dining hall. The alien delegates were already seated at tables arranged to accommodate their various body types. 12 species in one room, all of them afraid of the humans they had ignored for so long. Jake served each table personally, explaining what he had prepared for them. His movements were calm and controlled, showing no sign of the deadly skills they all knew he possessed. He was just a cook sharing food with friends. Delegates, Jake said when everyone had been served, you've been talking about humans as if we're monsters hiding in your shadows. But look at what I've given you tonight. Jake gestured to the tables full of carefully prepared food. Each dish was perfect for its intended species, but also beautiful enough for others to appreciate. The meal represented hours of work and decades of training. I could have poisoned any of you, Jake continued. I know which foods are deadly to your species, and which ones you can't detect by taste. I've had access to your meals for 2 years. If humans wanted to conquer the galaxy, we could have done it already. Ambassador Christhine stood up. Her crystal body was brighter now, pulsing with confidence instead of fear. Then why didn't you? Because conquest isn't cooking, Jake replied. When you conquer someone, you destroy their culture and replace it with your own. When you cook for someone, you learn what they need and give it to them. Cooking creates community. Conquest creates enemies. A delegate from the Hive Worlds clicked his mandibles nervously. But you have the power to destroy us all. Your weapons, your training, your secret agents everywhere. Jake pulled out his smallest knife and set it on the table. The blade was only 4 inches long, but everyone in the room knew it could kill them before they could move. Yes, we have power, Jake said. But power isn't about what you can destroy. Real power is about what you choose to create. He picked up the knife and began peeling fruit for dessert. His hands moved with impossible precision, creating delicate spirals of skin that fell like colorful ribbons. The simple act was somehow more impressive than all his combat skills. Earth chose to protect instead of conquer, Jake continued as he worked. We chose to serve your meals instead of serving your heads on platters. We chose to be your guardians instead of your masters. The delegates began to eat while they considered Jake's words. The food was exceptional, as always. But now they understood that every perfect cut, every balanced flavor, every thoughtful presentation came from someone who could have chosen violence instead. What happens now? Asked the delegate from the Gas Giant Federation. Now we finish what we came here to do, Jake said. We sign the peace treaties and end the wars. Then we figure out how to work together as equals instead of servants and masters. And if we refuse? Asked another delegate. Jake smiled and continued peeling fruit. Then you'll have to cook your own meals. The aliens laughed despite their fears. It was a small sound, but it was the beginning of something new. For the first time in galactic history, humans and aliens were sitting at the same table as equals. Jake finished preparing dessert and set down his knife. The blade was clean and sharp, ready for whatever came next. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new dangers. The traitor in Earth's government would have to be found. The forces opposing peace would make other attacks. But tonight, Jake was just a cook who had made a good meal for friends. Tonight, that was enough. Outside the dining hall, stars wheeled slowly through space. Among those stars, 10,000 human agents continued their work. They repaired engines and prepared food, piloted ships and cleaned floors, all while keeping watch over the galaxy they had chosen to protect. They were humanity's children, scattered among the stars like seeds. And now, finally, it was time for them to grow into something new.